the best advice I feel like has come from reading books and thinking about what is the lesson that this book is trying to teach me. If you enjoyed a book a lot, enjoy it as a reader first. Now go back and enjoy it as a writer and look and spend a lot of time looking at, like, look at the sentence construction here. Look at how they've described this. Read the books that you love again as a writer and just spend time thinking about how they connect to your craft.
This is the CritRPG Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything lit RPG, progression fantasy, and Royal Road. Hi everyone, and welcome to the CritRPG Podcast, the only podcast that advises people who you would like to have around in an irradiated wasteland. With me today is Uranium Phoenix, who writes Years of Apocalypse. How are you doing?
Doing all right. And awesome. Yeah, I don't recommend Irradiated Wasteland, but if you are going to have one, you want a Phoenix that is adapted to those conditions.
Yeah, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I should have asked you how you plume, but I maybe shouldn't.
I just think purple's a cool color, so I usually go with purple. I know that uranium's not actually purple, but I feel very strongly that it should be.
Ooh. What color? Is it just like a rock, right?
It's a rock, yeah. It actually doesn't look as cool as you want it to. You can and you're usually not going to see just like uranium by itself. You're usually going to see it in a I think it's an oxidized state. So it's uranium rich, and that's the yellow cake stuff, if I recall correctly.
Okay, yeah, well, that makes sense. But we talked about your book a little bit, and we kept skirting around the edges of it in the pre-show. Which you can, by the way, watch on Patreon if you want to. Now, tell me first of all, sell me on your book.
All right. So if you ever want to watch a time traveler, if you've ever wanted to be stuck in a time loop and you've ever really wanted to be a wizard, this is the book for you, because there's both wizards and time loops. I would say that 90% of my reviews on Royal Road mention Mother of Learning. So if you were like, okay, I really like Mother of Learning, this is another one that's kind of like that because there just weren't enough stories like that. What's the other way I can sell it? Basically, a young arcanist, wakes up one day and realizes that she has to stop the apocalypse. And that's a very tough thing to do because generally one person can't stop the apocalypse. So she has to basically go all over the place, figure all this stuff out, learn about everything. And so it's a great way to explore an interesting world and to just learn more about like this crisis, how it came to be, and how she tries to stop it. Mm-hmm. And we are currently on book 3 if you're on the Patreon, and book 2 if you are not.
Book 2 if you are not.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read, we've talked about that you have not read The Perfect Run, which is a heresy and you should be punished.
It is, yep.
But also, have you read Stubborn Skill Grinder Stuck in a Time Loop?
I've read the first chunk of it. Mm-hmm. And I think when I was going up on Rising Stars, he basically had the exact same idea of that we need more time loops in this world, and he hit the power fantasy of it right on the head, right? So I've read that part. It's not as much my style because it goes so hard. It's just ridiculous. So I've read part of it, and it's a completely, I would say it's like there's a time loop, but like tonally and structurally they're very different stories, I'd say.
What is your tone then?
I think my tone is more like I'm being kind of pretentious and intellectual with it. I'm trying to. That's just kind of I like. There's just too many pretentious intellectual things that I've read that I like, so I just kind of mirror that. So I'm trying. There's a little bit of humor injected, but it tries to play most things straight. It tries to make it feel realistic. Obviously, wizards aren't real, or at least that's what we've been told by big government. But I wanted to create a world that felt realistic, that felt like, yeah, this could be a place, this could be a thing. And so I try to ground all the laws of magic in laws of nature as well, and physics, and try to make it feel like this is a lived-in world with its own complicated political history without bogging everything too down in the unnecessary parts.
You should add Mage Errand to your list.
That's also on my list. It's already on there. Yes, I have it. Yeah. I've heard good things about that one too.
John's a good friend of mine. Ever since he brought in a podcast, we hang out regularly. We play Ravens Watch and stuff. It's fun. And he definitely writes 100% that in a different way, obviously. But so just asking for a friend, if you like very pretentious intellectual stuff, how do you write that so that people, don't hate it?
I kind of screwed up at the start. So it's a little bit like I drew heavily from my college experience of going to lectures and just being, and why, or mostly my friends' experience of like being a biochem major and just being like, I'm dead. Or just, some of the challenging engineering classes they were always complaining about, and tried to make it like, okay, this is what magic is. Like the reason, basically, if you're going to have a world where like being an archmage can, give you 1,000 times more power than an average person, the question you have to ask is, why isn't everyone an archmage, right? If that much power is, you have to make it a really difficult thing. And I think I started off the story on that question, and that was not the way to do it. I needed to start on a couple of different things first. But the way I tried to do it is I just tried to make it feel like the kind of experience you would have, but just in this different setting. So one of the reviews said, I hate you because you made this feel like this. You made me relive, one of my college classes I hated. And I was like, all right. So that's kind of how you do it, is you bring in like the experiences that your audience has had, and you try and make them relatable. Everyone's gone to school, which is why I think Magical Academy has such of a draw to us, because we can relate to being a student. And maybe the student's overwhelmed. Maybe the student's, enmeshed in much of drama. Maybe they've got an annoying friend. Maybe it's got a crush. Anything that you put in there, you're starting to connect more with your audience. And so that's where I started with. The other weird thing is when I was a teacher, I taught science and history primarily to my elementary students. And so I've always liked science. I've always liked history. So I have a decent understanding, like, I'm not going to be able to do a bunch of physics equations, but I know conceptually what's going on with all that. And so I tried to bring those kinds of facts into there. I know a little bit about geology. So, I had her take a geology class. And so like you're tying real world stuff into there. And then you do the same thing with the politics. You do the same thing with all of it, is you try to make it feel as much like there's a connection to the real world, so it feels more genuine and realistic.
Okay. That's for the setting though, right? So I wonder if setting really is as important as people think, because in my personal experience, setting draws people in, yes, but it's the characters that make them stay. Or certainly, in our case, the numbers that go up.
I almost think, I think that the most important thing to do is to start with a strong character. And I think that like people will engage with the setting when there's people they care about in that setting. So the setting is kind of, for me, it feels like the setting is more of a long-term draw, and the characters are the primary draw.
So what is a strong character?
That if I can figure that out, I'll become a millionaire, I promise. Characters are actually the thing that I struggle the most with, I think, in my writing journey. And that's because when I started in high school writing stories, I was like, characters are stupid, man. Who cares who the characters are? I just want a wizard. He's just going to go and kick booty and do this thing. And so I was like, I didn't care about the characters. I cared about the plot. And so that meant that I wasn't really paying close attention to characters and why I liked the stories I did. In retrospect, I was 100% wrong. Characters absolutely make or break a story. And the reason, you care about the plot and the adventure is because you've got these people that you're connected to. So there's little things you do, for establishing a strong character. You want to, again, make them relatable in some way. Have them struggling against something, this is going to be kind of a weird tangent. Diary of a Wimpy Kid is a much beloved story by everyone who's in elementary school. That book, you can't get rid of it. They love it. There's so many of them. They want more. The kid is an underdog, and he kind of just has bad things happen to them all the time. Not like terrible things, just like, oh, that's so annoying, or this is bad. And it's this underdog's tale, and the kid's just constantly harassed by just life. every single person, I feel like there's so many students that identify with that. The funny thing is both victims and bullies will read that book, and both will say, like, I'm that character. I relate to this character. Because I think a lot of us always feel like we're the underdog. And, you look around us, maybe you can kind of understand why. And so having a little bit of an underdog, like we want the character who's struggling, not the character who already has achieved total victory. So, make the character struggle, make those struggles sympathetic in some way. Yeah.
I always recommend this book. I want to recommend it again, by Matt Bird. I think it's called Secrets of Character. Yeah, that's the title. Or Secret of Story as two. And he also has like this this podcast. He has a wonderful blog that is completely free. You can read all of it. It's on Blogspot though, so it's very hard to like search. But he has this idea that for a character to be good, you need to believe, care, and invest about this for this character, right? So like believe means that the character has to have like a certain diction. It has to be consistent. The character has to be believable, right? So they have to act in accordance with their own beliefs. There's this anecdote that I love. I think it was like Judi Dench or whatever, like Dame Judi Dench, and she was like playing a queen for the first time, and she said she was like screaming and demanding stuff. Like it was Shakespeare, like the queen demands stuff. So she's screaming, and her teacher said, like, you don't need to yell. You're a queen. And then she got it, because like queens don't, like, they're used to getting what they want. They're not going to yell. They're going to be like, let's get me this. Like, bring me their heads. Right. And if you can pull that off, if the character is like believable, that's super cool. In an RPG, most characters are believable because they're everyman, right? Like, or like blank slates. Care means you care about the circumstances. And that is the thing that you said, like the underdog part. There's one thing that's like super drug for making characters like care aboutable, and that is make them misunderstood. Make them misunderstood. Like they just want to be friends, but they get bullied the entire time, right? Or the best story is the one about like a husband who wants to like do a surprise party or make a surprise party for his wife, and she thinks he's cheating on her because of it, right? That sort of stuff. That gets you to like care about it. And that is good enough for the first chapter or so, but then you also need to invest, because you need to at least have the belief that there's a chance that this character will get out of the shitty situation. If the main character is just getting hammered the entire time and just getting slammed by problems and never does anything about it, it's a complete pushover, then people are going to be like, well, I don't really care about this guy. Like, sure, he's going to lose, and I know what the end is like, right?
We want to see someone struggle. And for progression fantasy and lit RPG, I think especially, we want to see more victories and less defeats and less of them getting banged down, everyone likes a fighter. If you've got a character who's just a pushover, it's not very inspiring. It's way more inspiring to see the person who's going to resist no matter what, who's going to do what they have to, who's going to try as hard as they can. And also,
this is why like lit RPG is like quote unquote easier to write, because you have this inherent like capability in the character. The character has to like have these cool abilities, and they do cool shit with it, which is awesome. But even when you lose, you can still show capability, and you can still show like, okay, next time it's going to be better. And if you care enough about this character, you can also watch him lose. Like Jason Asano gets his ass kicked like from here to Friday for the first 3 books, and people love it, right? They said that, like the first 3 books are like the best books in the series. But still, he like shows like a lot of capabilities when he's not actively going against like elder gods. So yeah.
Well, and having making initiative and being autonomous, agency. Being their own person, agency. That's the word I'm looking for. Good. Yes. Agency is so critical.
Well, I can only recommend agency to everyone because of my second job. And anyway, like I'm an agent.
Okay.
So
now I get it.
Thank you. the first laugh I got out of you. I am vindication. That being said, tell me how and why and when your book.
Okay, so the biggest thing was like, as I was reading Mother of Learning, I was also like, I'm going to quit my teaching job because I'm just too burned out.
I thought it was correlated, like, this book is so good, I'm going to quit my teaching job.
That would be funnier. But yeah, no, they just happened to be kind of in parallel. So yeah, I was already basically planning on, I was just like, I can't do another year of this. It's just been too hard. I'm too burned out. I'm not doing any of my hobbies anymore. So I'm going to take a chance on writing cool stories. And I was reading Mother of Learning, and I was just like, this is great, as most people who read Mother of Learning think. And I was also thinking, like, there's these other directions he could have taken it. And I wonder what the story would be like if it went this way, or what if you did this, or what if you had more of this thing. And so, as I was reading it, I was also planning, and this is not something I do specifically with this Mother of Learning. It's what I do with basically any book I like, is I think, what else could we do with that? Where else could this gone? Yeah. What's another direction? How would I write this story? How would I like change the story? And kind of that's like where fanfic comes from. But I don't write fanfic because I'm just like, well, I don't want to like mess up your world. That's yours.
Yeah.
I want to I'll just do it in my own world. So I'll just make up all this other stuff and do it there. So yeah, I basically just started like thinking about it in my head and thinking about all the directions it would go. But then I was also pulling, from a bunch of other stuff as well. So basically, I've always liked time loops. The Stargate SG-1 episode where they get stuck in a time loop is great. The Live, Die, Repeat, which is what it should have been the title, but it was Edge of Tomorrow is the actual title. That was great. Loved Groundhog Day. Secret time loop known as Triangle doesn't, that's a little bit of a spoiler, but enjoy that movie. That's great. So I just love time loops. And again, like, there's just not enough time loops out there. So I was like, okay, I'd already had these ideas for a time loop. And so I started kind of like combining them all. Well, I was also, and then all the influences that are just kind of like in the back of my brain. Okay, Wheel of Time has been a huge influence on me just because that was the series I was reading for a very long time, because it's a long series as a kid. And so I just, the way that the politics were going on in that world, the way the magic was, like the different power levels of the characters, all those different dynamics kind of worm their way into my brain, and I can kind of see them as I'm writing, and not even intentionally, they'll come out in the story. And so, yeah, it's just like a culmination of like, I've got all these book ideas. Ooh, I've got this really cool idea for this, that, and the other thing. All right, let's shove that in there with the time loop, and voila.
That's it. And just wrote the book, and then it just happened.
Well, the other thing I was thinking is like, I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to try to do Royal Road stuff, I need, like, tons of people have done lit RPG. I've barely started reading lit RPG. I'm not going to do it better than all these people. I'm not going to do this, that, or the other thing better than, these people that have been writing in this genre forever. But I kind of get progression fantasy, because that's what I really like. Like, that's a big part of the fantasy books I liked was that progression aspect, even if it was really small sometimes. And so the other aspect of it was like the fact that I couldn't find another story like it. I was like, okay, if people really like this, they want more. There's a advice I got from Writing Excuses, which was, there's no such thing. The only competition is a bad puppet show, from Mary Robinette Kowal. And the idea was, if you do a really good puppet show, people want more puppet shows. If you write a really good time loop, people want more time loops. There's not enough time loops. Let's write a time loop.
Yeah. This is like a whole tangent on like competition and like competing against yourself. It's super important to me that people understand that writing to market, or writing in general, or any business endeavor, is an infinite game, right? It is endless. The amount of players is not fixed. They can join and leave at any time. And you have no idea what's going to go on. And there is no winning strategy in an infinite game. You cannot win forever. What works today might not work tomorrow. And so the only real person you can really compete against is not like the best guy on top, because he will fall eventually. It is a law of nature. You can compete against yourself. You can try to be better than yesterday, and that will inevitably lead to more success, or more likely to lead to success, like sustainable success, rather than competing with like a top dog. So yeah, I like it. And you went out, you had a book that you want to write, and you wrote the book. That's good.
That's how you do it. That's definitely like a crucial aspect is there. Yeah, I think there's like, so if I going back to my high school self, I was like, I'm going to write the most unique book ever. I'm going to write things that no one has ever written. I'm going to write. And then I was just like, all right, let's break every convention. Okay. So, and then I would just fall into it. So I one time I was like, okay, so you know what? I'm going to have an evil wizard. But evil wizards are always like dark and they wear black robes and they're like necromancers and stuff. I'm going to have like the council of these wizards. I'm going to have the white wizard be the evil one. And my friend was like, no. Interesting.
Oh, no.
You should call him Saruman. And I was like, dang it. And then, I did the same thing with something else. I'd been reading Order of the Stick. I was reading Order of the Stick back then. Order of the Stick has been going on for a long time. The original lit RPG, I want to say, not the original, but it's been going on for such a long time. Anyways, I basically accidentally wrote a scene from Order of the Stick in my first novel that I wrote in high school. And then the more I've lived, the more I've been like, okay, don't worry about originality. If you've got a cool story, the originality will come. It's going to come through your own unique voice. Don't worry about being original. Worry about just writing a good story.
I often joke that Brandon Sanderson steals all my ideas and he writes them before me.
Yep.
Because I was like, well, about if I wrote a story about like the secretary of the like evil supervillain superhero. Like, okay, well, that's kind of, yeah. Like, okay, well, medieval world, but there's power armor. Okay.
Done. Yep.
Yeah. I'm like, okay. This one he won't get. So what if I had someone find like a hover tank in like some ancient cave in a post-apocalyptic world, and they would have to like basically train up that hover tank. And I was Skyward, and I was like, no, Brandon. And then I turned around and wrote urban fantasy because it's something Brandon Sanderson doesn't write.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, that fall apart too. So it's inevitable. There's nothing new under the sun. Like Shakespeare said that like 500 years ago.
Yeah.
So
well, we are all a product of the environment around us. Yeah. And that there's so many environments that are encompassing of entire countries and the entire world. So yeah, good luck finding something that isn't connected to your experience as a human being on Earth.
And also, it doesn't really matter because like even if the premise is the same, I'm quite sure that my like power armor fantasy book, they were dozens of them before. I'm quite sure. And it wouldn't be the same as Brandon Sanderson's. I mean, if it were, then I would be very, very rich and very famous. But I don't. It wouldn't be. It would be different because I have different life experience.
Yep.
Speaking of experience, what's the best advice you've ever gotten as a writer? And don't say write.
I won't. I actually thought about this, and when I was thinking about it, I was like, well, what advice has someone given me? And I realized that that's actually not where I've gotten my best advice, although I have a wonderful crit group. I love them. But like the best advice I feel like has come from reading books and thinking about what is the lesson that this book is trying to teach me. So I have a couple. So I'm gonna list a couple. The Locked Tomb series by Tamsin Muir.
Oh God.
Is wonderful. Is definitely like, it's still up here as favorite. Like there's nothing has beat it yet. All three of the books that are out. Needs to get the fourth book. I need it so bad. And the lesson that taught me is every genre is yours. If you are writing fantasy, guess what? It can also be a romance and a comedy and a sci-fi and a, we can have a play in there. She has taken every single genre and put them into one story, and it works beautifully. It's amazing. You can even put memes in your story. No one can stop you.
I love it. But reading that thing is like eating those like very high dense nutrient bars. Like,
I love it.
You eat it and then you chew on it for like a couple of days, and then you read the next chapter because
I binged them all.
There's like I love this thing. It's amazing, but there's something about it that is like, because I'm not a native speaker, maybe, right?
Possibly.
but also because like you did a lot of like biology, so you know all about like oscillatory fragments. I do.
Yeah, she does use a lot of very large words. Yes, I can see how that might be annoying if it's not your first language.
I'm okay with it. Like I'm obviously like I'm pretty close to like native speaker level at this point, but there's always some nuance that I don't get. It's like same thing for like American poetry. I just don't get it. Like I think it's lovely, but like there's cultural nuance there that I just don't get. And I mean like for Murray, who's like New Zealander, it's just amazing stuff. But at the same time, it's so weird. I don't hate it. I love it, but I don't hate it. I just can't get through it because it's like so tough, like
that makes sense.
Heavy and thick.
Yeah, they are heavy books. So you can read them extremely fast, and you can also read them extremely slow, and you're going to get a ton out of them.
How do you read that book fast? How would you read that?
I couldn't put it down.
But
also, if you listen to Moira Quirk read them, it's one of the best experiences ever. That's also fantastic.
That makes sense because I was reading them and I was like, I had to read every paragraph twice because like there was always something that my eye got caught on.
No, I blitzed through them.
Like I felt that was like a violation of humanity. Like you had to read that book. Like you had to read every paragraph at least twice because there was something in there that like teased at like deeper understanding and you needed to know, which is an art in of itself. It is tremendously good. And did you so in the second one, did you also notice the point where her editor was like, Tamsin, you're great, but can you just for once write like a single normal paragraph or like a couple of paragraphs and then we can like get this premise out and then everything can go on from there?
I didn't notice that, no. The second one is, in my opinion, completely flawless. It's so amazing. Just like there's so many things she's doing with it structurally. There's these layered metaphors. There's like the character interact. It's so good.
It's amazing.
It is also feels like a fever dream, and
yes,
it's amazing to be able to write something that makes you feel like you're insane.
Yes, you like you don't really quite have like the same thing, and like I keep thinking about the ending of the first one. I keep thinking about sentences of the second one. The sword hated you to touch it. Such a good line.
Oh, and there's so many. I'll just go back and open to a random page and be like, read just like that page and just be like, oh, there's another really good line. Because another thing that she does, and so this actually goes to really good advice for an author. If you enjoyed a book a lot, you enjoy it as a reader first. Now go back and enjoy it as a writer and look and spend a lot of time looking at look at the sentence construction here. Look at how they've described this, because she does a wonderful job of getting you to visualize exactly the kind of scene that I think she's looking for with just a couple paint strokes. Just a few descriptive phrases and you will have this beautiful visual in front of you. And she does it in an amazing way. It's really great. And so read the books that you love again as a writer and just spend time thinking about how they connect to your craft.
Yeah. This book.
I got more advice books though. Here's another one. A Memory Called Empire. There are a lot of different stories that you can tell using the same cool thing. As I was reading it, I was like, man, there's a cool idea of like the implant where you're sharing a mind with someone. It's in the first chapter, so I don't think it's a spoiler. And she goes and does this like amazing story. But then I was just thinking, there's a totally different way you could tell this story. There's a totally different way you could take it here. It could have gone this direction. So I kind of did the same thing with that as I did with Mother of Learning. I haven't done anything with it yet. I didn't write a book, based on it, because that's an entire other project that I'd need to get to at some point. I did start something. I have a million started books. Anyways, there's so many different ways you can take one premise. So we start with this premise, and there's 100 different ways you could take it. Next piece of advice comes from. Go ahead.
One question: can you write books in parallel?
Read books in parallel or write books in parallel?
Right.
So the first a couple of years ago, I've told you no. However, now I am kind of trying to do that. So whenever I'm just getting like, I'm just completely stuck on this chapter, like I need to sit down and think about it for a little bit. But I've got this little, hamster wheel running on this corner of my brain. So I've started writing a few chapters here and there for other things that could be the next project. I don't know what those are yet. I've got like 5 ideas and I need to narrow down which one is the best one. Eventually they might all get written. Who knows? But
or not.
I'm kind of doing it, but like it's much easier for me to just focus on one project.
Yeah, because like for me, see, I have two very different books, right? So there's Torchbearer, which is like thick and pretentious and needs another rewrite. Always needs another rewrite, because I like layer like 5 different like narrative things. It's too much. And then I have like a funny story about some people, like a slice of life story about people in college starting a band, but they're also in hell and also running a startup as dungeon NPCs.
I love the premise. That sounds great. Yeah.
It's super easy to write. It's super funny. The characters like pop into my head and I just like write them down. But if I do that too much, and at some point I like run out of steam, and then I want to go back to my hardcore story, and I have to basically read the entire first book again because I have no idea what the fuck happened and I have no context. So yeah, I can't do parallel writing for that reason.
Yeah, it's tough. I can kind of do it. You know, stories kind of stick in my brain.
Yeah,
like at least the premise and like the plot and stuff like that. So I don't have to do a ton of rereading as I move back and forth. I also keep like huge numbers of notes.
I love people who take a number of notes. I think I've now found a way to kind of do it myself, but I always keep forgetting like minor details that then just like never pop up again. But I think that's what editing is for. You read through the book again and we're like, oh shit, I forgot about this. So
yeah, tough to do it like with a web serial though is the problem, right? Is because so I try to make sure that there's no continuity errors, character errors, anything like that. I've done a pretty good job, but yeah, it's just a way to, and it's also just like a way to keep me on track, and also like just quick reference, like, oh, how did I describe this again? Oh, I've got a note that tells me, oh, you know, what's the deal with this city and this character? Okay, that's right, I described them with this hair, or they did this thing, or the last time they saw them was in this cycle right here, and so it's just to speed up the process. I only do it because it saves me time.
I don't have character notes, which is sometimes hard. I know what the core of the character is. I know these people as like people, and I rather focus on like a very small cast. And if I don't focus on a small cast and have like a larger cast, then I don't have time to flesh out the other characters anyway. So I just say that character is like a goofy, like 2 adjectives, like a goofy sidekick. Done. And it's okay for like very minor characters, but everyone you spend more than like 4 lines of dialogue with, you really want to have like know what their favorite food was like when they were a kid. I think. But yeah, it's hard, but it's also fun. And I always feel as though like writing notes will take me out of the loop. So how do you take notes? Do you go through it again after you're done, or do you do it while writing?
I do it as I'm writing. Yep. It kind of does take me out of the loop, but like then I can just go back to it with that detail. So like basically anytime I feel like I need to, I'll just like pause. Okay, I need to update these notes. I need to figure out this. I need to check my outline, and then I'll go, right?
So I mean, I couldn't do that because I would be like writing names with my left hand, and with my right hand, I'll take a potato chip and eat it.
That's the great thing is
old meme. Yeah,
I'm sure you've discussed this with other authors. Everyone has a totally different writing process, and if you're going to be a writer, you have to find your writing process, and there's just a lot of discovery involved in that.
Yeah,
what works for you?
The first million words is not that like you get better at wording. You get better at like your own process. I
think you do get better at wording too. Just the sheer writing a lot is helpful.
I wonder now, do you get better at writing because your own process gets perfected, or do you get better at writing because just practice makes perfect in general? Is it like the same thing?
It's not necessarily that practice makes perfect. It's just like if you practice something enough, just by necessity, you're going to practice a lot of other things too. Focused practice is going to do better, right? So if you are doing a book study on something to really dive into characters, you're going to make character growth faster, even though you've done less writing than someone who is just writing a ton, but they're just writing garbage, right? So yeah.
That being said, so I always like to bring up this example from pottery, because focus practice is great once you hit a certain level, but they've done a study where they told one group, hey, make the best pot you can as a beginner, and then another group, hey, make as many pots as you can. And the people who made more pots generally learned faster than people who made like one perfect pot. I think that's true until a certain point. So you like just like get into it and you make a lot of pots and you learn. And I think that at a certain point, switching it around and go like, well, today I want to make a lot of pots because I am already fast, but I want to pay special attention to this thing. Right?
Interesting.
At that point, I think it becomes more interesting, more beneficial. But I have no.
How does that translate to writing? Yeah, who knows? That's because not every skill set is going to go the exact same way. But yeah, interesting.
The only kind of like person. I mean, I have like a crit group myself, and I've noticed that people who consistently write every single day got a lot better, faster, even if they don't really pay attention to something. So Sean here, right, is very like known for writing a crap ton of words. Like he is like chunking them out.
That's old folks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That the amount of stuff that he was outputting is staggering to me. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I've seen him type. Like I've sat next to him typing. He's reduced that fast. He used to be a typist. And he's got 10 finger typing and no filter and just like writes this stuff down. And I saw
I could write 20 words per minute. I could type 100 words per minute, but I can only write 20 words per minute. Like it's not it's a matter of the brain's got to like catch up to what's going on and everything. So
and like discuss possibilities and like discard them.
Yeah.
And for Sean just writes the first thing that comes to mind. He just writes. And it always kind of works out. It's always a good story. But he himself said like, hey, look, this is not going to like be a Pulitzer Prize winner. I'm just like going to write a really cool story. And if that being said, though, I've read his first stuff, and then we worked through his like. I'm not saying like I'm sort of like a mentor or whatever, but I did help him through the beginning of Dawn of the Last Dragon Rider, just like the first chapter, and that was like already like leagues beyond what he'd written just like 6 months ago. And I've read Ultimate Level 1, the beginning of it, and that was leagues above that one. So definitely 100% think if you can write 12,000 words a day on a consistent basis, then you're getting there. Okay. I mean, I think
but also don't burn yourself out. If you can't, please don't burn yourself out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, please don't. Yeah, like there is a certain so from a market analysis perspective, there is a certain value to writing quality, to trying to be better, to not just chasing a trend. Because yes, there are a bunch of authors who make a lot of money off of Patreon by churning out a lot of stuff. Yes. And there's a market for that, but that market is very small. And I personally feel it as though like that's been mined. Like it's full. And there will never be like a mass market. There will always be like these like very hungry 1 to 5% at the very beginning of the bell curve that are like the earliest adopters who really just want more and want to be at the cutting edge. If you want to target the mass market after you're already like after Lit RPG has like taken that hurdle, quality will always win, because just because of the Matthews principle. If a lot of people are talking about your book, you will sell more books, which will mean more people will be talking about it. And you only get there by quality. That's my certain belief. Because if I brought, like, for example, Primal Hunter, right? This is an example because I'm not his agent, but if I brought Primal Hunter to like any publisher, they would be like, "This is certainly interesting, but we wouldn't publish this." Like this, right? So Matt Dinneman got published because he is a god when it comes to tension and gut-wrenching drama, and sprinkling comedy on top of it to make it feel like it's a comedy, but really it's like an existential horror dream.
He's also got the cultural zeitgeist nailed.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So huge market. Yeah, the publishers are always chasing. Well, a lot of people are always chasing like the thing that just succeeded in a way that it's like, but they just did it. Like you can't do what they did because they just did it. You're coming second, so you have to have a slightly different strategy. And I think we're seeing that now. I mean, if you go back to some of the really older stories and you call some of the new stories, just the average quality I think is increasing each time, and also like more cool things are being investigated, thematically as people play around with the genre. So
I think. So I talked with another friend of mine a couple of days ago, and he said like, "Hey, I'm going to go back to like writing epic dark fantasy because that's what I want to do, because I just don't feel like LitRPG has like this gold rush moment anymore." And I still think we're like at the end of the second stage here, so like there's still space, but definitely so this April, a bunch of publishers will release like a bunch of LitRPGs. Ilona Andrews are writing LitRPG, right? So and for some reason they're publishing with Orbit, even though they were like staunch self-publishers before. I have no idea what's happening. But yeah, they're cool. They're happy with it. They're making it. They're doing it. And these people will have bigger draw than you usually. So it's going to be hard to compete against them in the market. I don't know. So I think,
also like as you were talking about at the beginning, is like the market is not like a fixed thing. Like people will come into a genre, and if they like it and they're enjoying it, and so
and they might leave again, right? They might stay. Like the only thing I hope is that it will never become like. I mean, there's risks that it could become like romance, where someone figures out the formula and then you just write that formula and nothing else.
Yeah.
Like there hasn't been a single innovation in romance since Romantasy. Right.
I can't speak to that because I know nothing about the romance genre. I know it by its reputation only. So yeah.
Yeah, like romance is like Romantasy is like,
I've heard it's
like
quite
more free form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's super formulaic. It always has to be like a certain way, and depending on who you want to write, it's gotten to the point where you have like people write what's going to happen in the book, in the tags,
just
above
so they
the
know
summary.
exactly.
Yeah, like because it's comfort food. It's kind of like ordering out, right? You're not ordering pizza because you want to like have like a life-changing experience.
Got to find the pizza that does create a life-changing experience.
Go to Napoli. Just like, I have to get it. Okay, on Neapolis. Sorry. Yeah, cool. But okay.
Can a team of has-been teen idols save the world? Find out in the new series Boy Bands and Dragons. When Neverboyland is sucked into a magical world, their reunion takes a back seat to staying alive. But if they can get over the past drama that drove them apart, they may find that even pop stars can be heroes. Come and discover your new favorite read, Our Comeback Tour is Slaying Monsters, the first in the Boy Bands and Dragons series by Kim Smuga Otto, dropping on Kindle Unlimited, October 25th.
So, what's one thing that you've learned while writing that you would change if you could start again, or would do differently in the next book?
I think I've alluded to it slightly. I think the biggest one I've thought about is the change. So the biggest feedback I've gotten from just a large number of people who read my current project is, what's going on with these first chapters? Like they're way too slow, which is interesting because the genesis of those chapters were, I was thinking about Mother of Learning and I was like, man, this is such a great story, but it starts so slow. And I thought I had a really good idea for how to kind of amp the tension up earlier on. And I don't think it quite landed. It's also a matter of, I started whenever I start a story, I kind of hit my stride after a couple chapters, and I hadn't quite hit my stride as I was doing those early chapters. So I've thought a lot about those chapters. At some point, I don't know. I've left them as it is just because it would be a ton of work to rework them, because I also jammed those chapters full of a bunch of critical events and foreshadowing and like tools that I needed for the rest of the story. So revamping them would be a pain in the butt, and I'm not good at editing yet. I mostly try to do the Happy Gilmore method of writing, which is get it right the first time. Just get a hole in one, and then you don't have to worry about it. Make the chapter good the first time, then you don't have to edit. So, my edit. When I do editing, I don't do a ton of like big revisions. I just do a lot of little tweaks here and there.
I'm gonna let you know a secret to editing. Mm-hmm. when you do a first draft and then you go back, don't revise, rewrite. Take the entire thing, toss it in the trash, start from scratch.
I can't trash it in the trash. I'm a hoarder. I don't like to do. I'm not a hoarder, but I hate to throw words away when they're perfectly good, serviceable words. When I write a story, when I write a chapter, it kind of crystallizes in my brain, and then I'm like, "Well, this is the way it is. It can't change anymore. This is what happened." And so it's really hard for me to like look at it a different way. So I'm working on that with another thing that I did before this project. I'm trying to revise that one, and so I'm practicing my revising there. So I definitely want to go back at some point and like figure out if there's an easier way to fix them or fix them up in some way, because I thought that like the spy drama would be enough of like, what's going on with this? But there's a ton of people who are just like that. I can't stand those first chapters. Just persevere. Just, you know, and you don't want people to suffer for the first 10 chapters. So
speak for yourself.
I got to figure that out. Yeah. So
you're right.
I think I was trying to cram too much setting at once when I needed to focus more on the characters. I needed to focus more on, you know, an interesting series of events. And
that is so interesting, because I made the exact same mistake. And I thought I was showing and not telling, but I was really telling. I was telling a lot of like background information that had nothing to do with the book, but that I really wanted the reader to know. And while writing it, and even half a year after it, like when I did my first revision, I was like, no, this is great. And then I was like, it's actually not. And then I did the first revision, and I felt as though I needed to have all this information in. But then I was like, actually, I don't. I get to the end of the book, and I'm like, all the information didn't really do much. Actually, I explained so much that it killed all sense of mystery for my main character. How do I get a main character to kind of feel mysterious and like feel as though they've done all this shit before, and you don't quite know why, but it's also not important enough for you to want to know? I have no idea, but I'm going to find out.
Practice
or die trying.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to like find that sweet spot, because it's something that we don't know.
And that's what I kind of landed on, is start faster and start building the world one necessary piece at a time. You don't need to get the entire world in there. You just need to get, okay, what do they need for this arc? What do they need for this arc? And, you know, then you can start, once they're hooked, then you can start sprinkling in more about your cool world history and the weird magic system and all that stuff. But they've got to have something that's pulled them in first.
I found that like these expo dumps usually happen at the 25 to 30% mark, right? That's like you got over the first hurdle, and now we need to know kind of what's going on to have a bit more context, to like add more spice, so we have like more stuff in the burner for the next arc. I don't like formulaic writing. Even when I plot, I don't do it. I write out chapters, I write out ideas, I put them all together, and then I see what holes there are, and I fill them with a structure. That makes way more sense to me. But definitely I can see that it's the skill of knowing what exactly the reader needs to know and what not to know is crucial. Going back to Moore, you read the first, so you go through these like really thick prose and get to the bottom of it and realize, okay, well, there's an emperor here, and he's going to maybe die. Also, somehow it's in the future-ish. And then you go through, and like lots of stuff happens, or you think stuff is happening. You don't quite know if something's happening or not, because it might all be a dream or not, or maybe yes, or maybe it's a play.
On the other hand, though, like that is book 2, right?
Yes.
And so if you've already shown with book 1 that you can fulfill your promises as an author, that your characters are going to kick butt, that you're going to tell a satisfying story, that you can make these characters work, now they're already invested. And book 2, you can go way crazier with.
You can write second person past tense, because why the fuck not?
You can. And that's why I love her. It's amazing. It's just basically like, you know, someone presented her with like rules of things you shouldn't do in a book, and she was like, I'm going to do all of these. You can't stop me.
Yeah,
and then she was right. No one can stop her. It's amazing.
And okay, so for everyone out there who's like, I'm going to write a book like that for my first book, look at me. Don't do it. Do not. I know you have this idea that you're going to be the guy who like rocks out of the gate with like this amazing first book. That's not how that works.
That was me in high school. Don't
yes,
be like
that
me
was
in high school.
That was me in college. Misunderstood, like poet.
Misunderstood
guy.
genius. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But Arrested Development, let's say. But don't do it. Mm-hmm. Instead, write something that you actually want to write. Right? Like write a story that you actually, not the story you want to read, but the story you want to write. That's different. Find something that comes easy to you and write that. Look at Prime Hunter. Look
also
at
just, write a book.
Writer. Yeah.
Make sure you get a book done and you know how that works.
Exactly.
And then you can do something complicated. Don't do it. Yeah. So a little bit of backstory there. This is, the Years of Apocalypse is the first thing that I've like published and put out there, but it's my, hold on, let me count. 4th book. Because the first book I wrote was just a practice book. I was like, okay, I've never finished a story. I just need to finish it. Brandon Sanderson's right. Finish a book. Don't make it super complicated. I made it linear. I made it one point of view. I had a gaggle of characters and I copied the structure of The Hobbit. Just so that I wasn't having to think about all these crazy things or do anything weird. I was just like, okay, yeah, they're going to go this, into a forest, and then they're going to go into some tunnels, and then they're going to do this. Instead of a dragon, it's going to, I'm flipping some stuff on its head, but it's basically just, a Hobbit rewrite. Second book, now I can do some complicated stuff. Now I have 3 rotating points of view, and I can try some more complicated stuff. So if you look at like, oh, this is his first book, I can do complicated stuff like that as my first book. Yeah, maybe you could be way better than I am. It's not too hard. It's you might be the genius, but you probably aren't.
It's like that. That's also like my hubris. I like doing stuff the complicated way because I like complicating things.
It is.
I
fun.
really like it. It is very, very, very fun. Yeah. And then what would happen if X, and just like keep doing that, and your book will become like very, very dense.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's okay. But only after writing like 600,000, 700,000 words am I getting to the point where I'm like going, I know why this is not working now. And now I'm sitting on a lot of like, basically, if earning money is your objective with this in some way, shape, or form, definitely do not do what I did. I think if you just do this as a hobby, don't listen to anyone. Just do whatever the fuck you want.
Oh yeah, if it's a hobby, do anything. Please stop worrying about the financial viability or how many people clicked on it. Like that doesn't matter at all. It's your hobby. It's your story. Do anything. If you're trying to do finance, if you want to make money off of it, you have to negotiate with your audience because you gotta make other people read it.
Jimmy Carr was like, everyone wants to be on stage telling the jokes. No one wants to sit at home for 80 hours a week writing the jokes and not going out and trying to make that one joke land like perfectly. No one wants to do that. I do that, so that's why I'm successful, and they're not. Yeah. There's no one goes to a basketball court, see some kids play, and they're like, hey, how much money have you earned with basketballing like these last 2 years? No one does that. But for some reason, when you say like, hey, I'm an author, it's my hobby, people come to and ask, hey, when have you earned money?
When are you going to publish it? Yeah, when are you going to
when you publish it's so weird.
Especially because like many art forms, I think people just do it because it's part of our brains want us to do it. It's like kids and play.
Storytelling is a very human thing. Yes.
Yeah, it's a very human thing. We should just do human things because they make us human. It's part of the human experience. So don't, if you're doing it for fun, please just do it for fun. Maybe you can make money off it some other time, but just, don't. I've seen some people like come in and they're like, I'm writing, this story and I love it. I'm having so much fun, but I think I need to change absolutely everything about it because it only has, 100 views or whatever. And it's just like, are you going to become the next Stephen King? Are you trying to make money? Oh no, I'm still in high school. Well, then chill out. Like, don't worry about it. Just have fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And also disable the fucking numbers on Railroad if you're doing it for fun. Like, do not rely on external validation for your own sense of happiness. It will always lead to ruin because people will always raise the bar for you. They will always say like, this is good, but they will never give you that feeling that you actually want, which is contentment. You can only get it for yourself. Set your fucking own bar, set it low, reach that bar and do a higher one for the next thing that you're doing. Do not rely on people clapping their hands. Like, do not. It makes you miserable. It makes you depressed. Do not do it. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. It's very important to me because I fallen down that trap. I've written a urban fantasy called The Flower, the Wish, and the Blood, and I tried to make it perfect on the first go, and it completely didn't work. Like, it was not a good book. The characters were inconsistent. I had the plot down, but the characters didn't want to be in the plot. It was complete trash.
Yeah.
I still love it. I still want to write it again. Yeah. But that's the trick. You write it, it's trash, and then you write it again as though you're writing it the first time.
Yeah, you can always come back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Write your first book, make it garbage, and then come back to it 10 years later, and it'll be amazing.
Write some trash. Like, if your goal is to write trash and just have fun writing trash, that's the best attitude to learn. Absolutely. Kids, like no kid learns to walk by going like, well, it's 5 o'clock. I got to put my daily steps in. They're doing it because it's novel and it's fun to stand upright.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Like, my walking coach told me to like walk again at 3 o'clock, and I got to put this in between meetings. Like,
I'm going to bring it back to education. Like, one of the things we were told is like, okay, so if you're going to do elementary PE, don't make them run laps. They'll hate it. However, here's a game of tag that will get the entire room running around like crazy. So you put clothespins on the back of their shirts, and then they have to try and collect as many clothespins as they can. And yeah, the entire room is just running. And so they get a huge amount of cardio exercise, and nobody's sad because they just all had a blast.
Yeah. Except for one kid who always...
Except for the one kid, yeah.
Yeah. But that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
You have to sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, like it's being a teacher is not an easy job at all. My favorite line as a teacher was always like, Kevin, you know I love you, but I am going to put you down in front of the entire class so that no one else fucks with me ever again. Is that okay with you? He's like, no, it's not. Well, then, tough luck. So,
yeah,
you can have fun with it.
If you're in the kindergarten class, they frown on you swearing. They just don't, yeah.
In Germany, no one gives a shit. So, since we're reaching the end of the podcast, how about you tell me about one book that you love and why is it awesome? I mean, we already talked about Tamsin, but
we've already talked about getting the ninth several times. Okay, so let me do something completely different then. Let's go sci-fi. But then I have to pick one book.
And Personal Forever.
Okay, no, I haven't read that one, so I have no idea. Man, it's always so hard to just pick like one book. So, okay, Getting the Ninth is the one book if you have to read one. Ian M. Banks' Culture series is just fantastic. There's all sorts of just fun, crazy stuff that he does. I love it. If you want the structurally crazy one, because you just read Harrow and you're like, I want someone else to make me even more insane, then you're going to read Use of Weapons. If you want the straightforward one where you actually can tell what's going on and it's a good introduction, you're going to read Player of Games. And I'm going to stop making suggestions because otherwise I'll just start opening up my spreadsheet full of books and start listing.
I do not have one of those. I just like read whatever I want to happen. What next? Otherwise I would go insane. I would feel as though I'm like failing myself.
It's a memory touchstone for me because some things are so difficult for me to recall. Like I can recall a plot, but I can't recall the title. And so I have the titles down next to the plot so that I go, oh, right. That's that one. Okay, that's the name of it. Otherwise I drive myself insane. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you read any Max Gladstone?
I think I have. I can't remember what I read that he wrote.
I mean, like This Is How You Lose Time War is great, but
I have read that one. That one's fantastic. Yes, no notes.
Yeah. It's I think you and I we share the same interest in like these sort of like fever dream books where you're not quite sure what happened, but something definitely did. And Gladstone definitely delivers on that. I think what Gladstone does like super well is that there's definitely more of a story underneath these things than there is underneath Name of the Wind, for example. Because Name of the Wind is like, it's beautiful and nothing really happens if you're thinking about it. he just goes to school a lot. Yeah, it's basically a slice of life, and he goes to school and finger banks an elf. Like that's all that happens, because no one can recall a plot. But it's good.
That's another one of those things where, like, as I was reading it, I was thinking, but there's so many other ways you could do that. Yeah, I have some ideas. I do have some ideas.
I mean, if you like these kind of books, you might also do a Torchbearer. But yeah, the last suggestion I have in that like direction. I mean, like, sure. Have you read the Gentleman Bastard series?
Excuse me. I'm gonna mute myself.
That's fine.
Yeah, well, you don't get an earful of my cough. Yeah. I have read
the coffee.
Yeah. First book. I read the first book. I have not read the rest of the books in the series because the first book felt very complete to me, and I was so the funny thing is I read that book after I read Name of the Wind and Wise Man's Fear, and I was like, oh, it happened again. I got George R. R. Martin again. I just started a series that's never going to finish, and as of the recording of this, neither of those authors has finished. So I was like, I can't go into the rest of the Gentleman Bastard series because it's taking a long time to release. I probably should go back and read the rest of them though.
All of these people, by the way, got very successful in their first book.
And then,
it's a huge pressure on it.
You're
they
watching
can't
the
write
Sanderson
something
lectures
else
too, right?
Yeah.
Same thing he says. Yeah. Don't get successful in your first book because then you don't know what you're doing.
The process.
You don't have the process.
Yeah, this is basically I mean, we're drawing from a lot of sources, right? So like, let's calm down. But the Sanderson lectures, the new ones, are excellent. This year's are excellent.
Yeah,
I've watched the first ones where it's just like him in a room of like 20 people. That's like being recorded with a cell phone cam, basically. And oh my god, like I watched it like in 2012 or whatever, and it was like you have to like re-listen in, and it feels a little bit like you're like decrypting enemy radio signals sometimes. Like you really have to like listen and like have like a Enigma machine right next to you. But the new ones are he really is at the peak of teaching writing at this point.
Yeah, he's
really
doing some awesome stuff.
Yeah,
and I'll also credit Writing Excuses as one of the things that helped get me back into writing because I was reading some Sanderson books and then I was like, oh, he also has a podcast. You know, I really meant to go back and write. It's called Writing Excuses. Someone I don't remember who recommended it to me, and so I started doing like little exercises there. Yeah, have an excuse.
I have no idea how I got into Royal Road. I don't remember.
I
know that at some point, I don't have friends. So I just know that at some point, I thought like, hey, I could write again, and I don't really want to care about like how often I post. So I'll just like post a chapter, and that was the first chapter of Torchbearer. And I posted it online, and then the next year I posted another one, which was universally considered as a very bad move. But yeah, it was okay. It worked. It was okay. I wrote, and now I'm writing. That's nice.
Yeah.
One last thing.
You got to build that habit. Yep. All right. Last thing.
Oh yeah, the habit. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. No, there was a reason why I wanted to talk to you about like Gentleman Bastard series, and that's Republic of Thieves, which is at the same time a political drama, but also kind of like a romance thing, but also kind of like not really a time loop, but one of like precursor things, and it's also a play that references itself in a series of flashbacks that kind of also retells what's happening in the main story.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. So I think you sold me on it. Good job. Now I have more books to read. Great, thanks.
I mean, there's always 1,000 Names by Django Wexler, who I really hope I can get on the freaking podcast at some point. It's not a progression fantasy; it's a military fantasy, but it's flintlock fantasy. And I think he's friends with Brian McClellan, who in turn is a student of Brandon Sanderson.
It's all connected. Big writing conspiracy.
Very much so. Yeah.
All these authors, they seem to know each other. They seem to know the same thing. They're all writing books.
It's a very small
How deep
world.
does this go?
There's a conspiracy here. Oh no, please don't get everyone started. There's no conspiracy. People just know each other and talk to each other. Like, holy shit. Okay.
Well, so I mean, There's a theme about that in my book I'm writing called The Years of Apocalypse. How does a conspiracy go down?
I think.
Anyways,
okay.
Yeah.
Is it a real conspiracy, or is it just like people like?
That's what you find out. I'm not going to spoil it. Yeah.
Have you read? I think it's not Vonnegut. It's The Calling of Lot 69.
I haven't read that one. No.
79. Calling of Lot something. I have to find it.
You said enough keywords.
49.
Number 49. Okay, that I think people can figure out the title. Yeah.
Calling of Lot 49.
No, I haven't read that one. But I kind of know what you're talking about. There's the most conspiracies are not done by a dark cabal of people hiding in a smoke-filled room going, here's how we're going to rule the world, right? It's everyday networking among people, right? All these authors know each other because they network. They talk to each other. Oh, they show up at the same con. Now you know this person, The same thing happens with businesses, with militaries, with, there's all these connections that form. And accidentally,
you too can come to our shadowy cabal meetings and just join in.
Yeah, you have to pay me first, though. It's very important that I do the treasury of the cabal meetings.
It's not a payment. It is a membership donation.
Solid Florinian ingots only. They need to have the arcane seal on them. That's a critical aspect.
Just remember to like scrub off the other crosses on it first.
Okay.
But there's there's certainly something to be said about just hanging out with authors. You should join the Discord. You should hang out with people. You should go to cons. LitRPG Con is coming up. That's gonna be awesome. And also Dragon Con. I will not say where on the podcast, but all of us authors have one spot where we always hang out every single time. Should all come.
The isn't it Worldcon is coming up again? So
Worldcon is not many people go there. There's three things people LitRPG authors go to.
To me, so I can go to it.
Well, you should. It's always a good time. If you know someone there. So there's Dragon Con, which is the spot people usually go to.
One, yeah.
LitRPG Con, which is probably going to be the next big spot because it's LitRPG Con. So I know for a fact that. Well, I shouldn't say. I know people are coming. I shouldn't say who's coming yet because I don't want to ruin the announcement. And I think there's the 20 books 50K in Vegas or Author Nation. Those are things that I know people are going to.
Okay.
Author Nation especially. I think Seth Fishman, all of his clients tend to go there. So yeah.
Yeah, but just talking with writers, just if you can find a group, an online group, that's just great. That's good stuff. Yeah. You learn stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a time when I considered doing a CritRPG Con in Europe, but probably not. Let's bring some authors together in Portugal because lots of people are living in Portugal because of the tax reasons. But otherwise, yeah. Anyway, let's do some shoutouts.
Okay, so speaking of secretive author cabals, Council of the Eternal Hiatus is great fun. I was thinking about who do I shout out, and there's a bunch of people that don't need shout outs, all the famous authors that I listed. And I don't know, I just like that one because that's a community where people are trying to lift each other up and get better at writing, and there's a lot of good people there, so that's awesome. I have another kind of a weird shout out. It's directed to the authors. It is the Something Awful Forums Thunderdome. So the other thing that got me back into writing was I needed to write, right? You have to write. And I needed lots of little things to write. So the Something Awful forums are an old ancient internet relic. You still have to pay $10 to post on them. But once you've done that, as long as you're not stupid, you won't get banned and you can continue posting as much as you want. Best $10 ever spent. Then you get to the Creative Convention forum and there's a thread called Thunderdome. Thunderdome has been going on since 2012. We are now on week, let me look it up, 654. So every single week since 2012, there has been a little short story contest. It's called Flash Fiction. It's kind of like Flash Fiction, but Flash Fiction is usually less plot oriented. And for whatever reason, the culture of Thunderdome has been, you're basically just writing a really short story. It's usually 1,500 words. and the prompt changes. The judge changes every single time. And what you go and you just sign up and you say, all right, I'm in. You've got a week to write your story. You post it. You get several people critique your story and give you feedback on it, and they always give honest critique. Sometimes they love it, sometimes they hate it, and then you can do it again, and you just keep doing that. The winner is the one that runs the next week's contest, and that was one of the things that helped me get back into writing, because when you only have 1,500 words, you need to make sure all your writing is doing as much as it possibly can. You have to write characters quickly. You have to get your plot. You don't have time to mess around. You're not writing this long prologue first. And so it was just great for increasing my skill as a writer. And there's also just an amazing writing community that revolves around that thread as well. So I'm going to shout that out because it's a long time contest. And it was great. A lot of great people there.
I love that. I would love it for people to, in general, pay more attention to the craft, because I do believe that's going to be important sooner or later. There's the town of web fiction is too small for the couple of us. I mean, there's going to be a point when sure it's going to be done with He Who Fights with Monsters, and no matter what happens, inevitably the next story will be less popular at the start. It's a law of nature. People are gonna leave, and then oh, it's not He Who Fights with Monsters. Yes, that's quite true. It's not, right? But I think it's still going to be a huge Patreon. Zorgoth is never going to stop, he said. He said that at some point Jake will fire an arrow through the sun, and there's going to be a bigger sun behind it. So it just happens. And yeah,
craft.
Just craft. You got to have craft.
That's a great excuse, because 1 week you're writing about potatoes, the next week you're writing about dogs in space, the next week it's like Vampire Week versus werewolves. Yeah, you basically every prompt is totally different, so it forces you out of your comfort zone and to do just weird stuff, and that makes you better writer.
Did you ever win?
Yeah, a couple times.
What was your favorite prompt that you posted?
Oh, I would always just do a fantasy or a sci-fi prompt. So I would just be like, all right, I think my favorite prompt was write me an alien creature that actually feels alien. And because I don't want a humanoid, I don't want Vulcans, I don't want someone, it's like, oh, this is an alien, but they just have little forehead creases or longer ears. So I assigned everybody a weird creature from Earth, and the rule is that your alien has to be weirder than this creature. So one person got the peacock mantis shrimp, another person got one of the immortal jellyfishes, another person got one of those big funguses. Maybe they got that one. There was a ton of animals involved, and so I tried to give them the weirdest animals from Earth, and then your job is to make it even weirder than that.
Okay, awesome.
That was fun. I loved it.
I always thought what would be fun is basically a sound or light based way for life form.
Yeah,
and then control came around.
I know. Everyone's stealing our ideas, before we write them. It's terrible.
Yeah. It's almost as though no one's ever really innovative.
It's almost it kind of arises from this collective society that we have, and we're not as original as we think we are. But it doesn't mean you can't have fun.
Zeitgeist, lots of other German words.
We did steal some of your words, yes.
Kindergarten.
Don't mess with us. We won't steal anymore.
English is 6 languages in a trench coat, so
it is. Try teaching grammar and phonics to students who don't understand it. It's just I'm so sorry.
I did. Well, okay, I was in college, and it was the same experience, but at some point I did understand. But okay,
they do eventually.
Let's say we cut it here, and then we move on to the bonus material, which this week is going to be, I think, pretty good.
Okay.
All right.
So the first part is any last words? Check out the Years of Apocalypse if you haven't. I'm loving it, and people are enjoying it, so it's fun. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. And subscribe, comment, do the whole thing. I know it's not doing much, and we still like the podcast, so I still like doing it, and I hope you enjoyed it too. And next week is going to be awesome as well. I can't wait for you guys to see the guest. Anyway, Ooh. Thank you so much for listening and or watching, and I'll see you next time. And if you're on Patreon, the show goes on.